Ronald's world shattered like a dropped mirror, reflecting 1,000 fragmented pieces of his life, none of which seemed to fit together anymore. The revelation had come not as a thunderclap, but as a slow, insidious drip, each drop eroding the foundations of his marriage, his family, his very sense of self. It started with a misplaced photograph, a casual comment overheard, a nagging feeling of unease that he had tried to dismiss as mere paranoia. But the universe, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor, or perhaps a twisted sense of justice, and it kept nudging him, pushing him closer to the precipice of truth. He had loved Sarah with a passion that burned bright and unwavering. She was the sun in his sky, the anchor in his storm, the very air he breathed. They had built a life together, brick by brick, filled with laughter, shared dreams, and the quiet comfort of companionship. Their son, Ethan, was the culmination of that love, a living, breathing testament to their bond. Or so he had believed. The first crack appeared innocently enough. Ronald was rummaging through an old box of Sarah's belongings, searching for a document he needed for a loan application. He stumbled upon a photograph tucked away in a forgotten corner. It was a picture of Sarah, younger, carefree, with her arm around a man he didn't recognize. The man had the same mischievous glint in his eyes that Ethan possessed, the same unruly brown hair, the same distinctive curve of the jawline. It was a fleeting resemblance, easily dismissed, but it planted a seed of doubt in Ronald's mind. He confronted Sarah, of course, showing her the photograph and asking about the man in the picture. She brushed it off, claiming it was an old boyfriend from college, someone she hadn't seen in years. Her explanation was plausible, her demeanor calm and reassuring, but Ronald couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. The unease lingered, festering in the back of his mind. He started paying closer attention to Ethan, studying his features, searching for any sign of resemblance to the man in the photograph. He found himself comparing Ethan to pictures of himself as a child, desperately trying to reassure himself that the boy was his. But the more he looked, the more he saw the similarities between Ethan and the stranger in the photo. Then came the overheard conversation. Ronald was working late one night, catching up on paperwork in his home office. Sarah was on the phone in the living room, talking in hushed tones. He tried to ignore her, to focus on his work, but snippets of the conversation drifted through the closed door, catching his attention like shards of glass. "It's been so long," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I still think about you all the time." Ronald froze, his blood turning to ice in his veins. Who was she talking to? And why did her voice sound so filled with longing? He strained to hear more, but Sarah lowered her voice, making it impossible to decipher the rest of the conversation. He wanted to burst into the living room, to demand answers, but something held him back. A sense of dread, a premonition of the truth, kept him rooted to the spot. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place a few weeks later, during a chance encounter at Ethan's school. Ronald was picking Ethan up from soccer practice when he saw Sarah talking to a man near the parking lot. The man had his back to Ronald, but as he turned to leave, Ronald caught a glimpse of his face. It was the man from the photograph. Ronald's heart lurched in his chest. He felt a wave of nausea wash over him, followed by a surge of anger so intense it threatened to consume him. He wanted to confront them, to demand answers, but he knew he couldn't do it in front of Ethan. He needed to gather his thoughts, to prepare himself for the inevitable confrontation. He waited until Ethan was safely tucked into bed before confronting Sarah. He sat her down at the kitchen table, his hands trembling, his voice barely a whisper. "Who was that man at Ethan's school today?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. Sarah's face paled. She hesitated for a moment, then looked away, unable to meet his gaze. That was David," she stammered. "An old friend." "An old friend?" Ronald repeated, his voice rising. "The same old friend from the photograph? The one you lied to me about?" Sarah burst into tears. "Ronald, please, let me explain," she pleaded. "Explain what?" he roared. "Explain how you betrayed me. Explain how you lied to me for years. Explain how the son I thought was mine is actually the son of another man." The words hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Sarah sobbed uncontrollably, unable to deny the truth any longer. She confessed everything. She had met David in college, and they had been deeply in love. But their relationship was tumultuous, filled with drama and uncertainty. She broke up with him and met Ronald shortly after. Ronald was stable, dependable, the kind of man she thought she needed. She convinced herself that she was over David, that she had made the right choice. But David had never truly left her heart. They had reconnected a few years into her marriage with Ronald, and they had begun an affair. It was a brief, intense rekindling of their old flame, and it resulted in Ethan's conception. Sarah had kept the truth hidden for years, terrified of losing Ronald, of destroying the life they had built together. She convinced herself that Ethan would never know, that Ronald would never find out. But the guilt had eaten away at her, poisoning her from the inside out. Ronald listened in stunned silence, his mind reeling from the enormity of her betrayal. He felt as if the ground had opened up beneath him, swallowing him whole. Everything he had believed to be true was a lie. His marriage, his family, his entire life was a carefully constructed facade built on deceit and infidelity. The revelation that Ethan was not his son was a blow that struck at the very core of his being. He loved Ethan with all his heart. He had watched him grow, taught him to ride a bike, cheered him on at soccer games. He had envisioned a future filled with father-son moments, graduations, weddings, grandchildren. Now, all of those dreams were shattered. But there was another, even more devastating twist to the story. As Sarah continued her tearful confession, she revealed a secret that would forever alter the landscape of Ronald's family. David, the man who was Ethan's biological father, was also Ronald's estranged brother. Ronald had grown up with David, but they had never been close. David was the rebellious one, the troublemaker, the black sheep of the family. He had always resented Ronald's success, his stability, his seemingly perfect life. They had drifted apart years ago, after a bitter argument that had severed their ties. Now, Ronald learned that David had not only slept with his wife but had fathered a child with her, a child that Ronald had raised as his own. The betrayal was so profound, so multifaceted, that it defied comprehension. Ronald felt a surge of rage, a primal urge to lash out, to inflict pain on those who had wronged him. But he also felt a deep sense of sorrow, a profound sense of loss. He had lost his wife, his son, his brother, and his sense of self, all in one fell swoop. He stood up from the table, his legs shaky, his head spinning. He looked at Sarah, her face streaked with tears, her eyes filled with remorse. He saw not the woman he had loved, but a stranger, a betrayer, a source of unimaginable pain. "I want you to leave," he said, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "I want you out of my house, out of my life. I never want to see you again." Sarah pleaded with him, begging for forgiveness, promising to make amends. But Ronald was unmoved. The trust was broken, the damage irreparable. There was no going back. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving Sarah sobbing at the table. He went into Ethan's room and stood over his sleeping son, his heart aching with a mixture of love and grief. He knew he could never look at Ethan the same way again, but he also knew that he would always love him, regardless of their biological connection. He spent the rest of the night packing Sarah's belongings, his movements mechanical, his mind numb. He felt like a robot, going through the motions, detached from his emotions. By morning, Sarah was gone. She left without a fight, without a word. Ronald watched her drive away, his face expressionless, his heart empty. In the days that followed, Ronald struggled to come to terms with the enormity of his loss. He felt like a man adrift at sea, with no land in sight. He couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't focus on anything. He was consumed by anger, grief, and a profound sense of betrayal. He considered leaving, running away from his problems, starting over somewhere new. But he knew he couldn't abandon Ethan. Ethan needed him, now more than ever. Even though Ethan was not his biological son, he was still his son in every other way that mattered. He had raised him, loved him, and nurtured him. He couldn't imagine his life without him. He decided to stay, to face the challenges ahead, to rebuild his life, piece by piece. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to make it work. He owed it to Ethan, and he owed it to himself. He started by seeking therapy, talking to a professional about his feelings, and learning coping mechanisms. He realized that he couldn't hold on to the anger and resentment. It was poisoning him from the inside out. He needed to find a way to forgive Sarah, not for her sake, but for his own. He also reached out to his family and friends, seeking their support and guidance. He was surprised by the outpouring of love and compassion he received. People who he hadn't spoken to in years reached out to him, offering their condolences and their help. He spent more time with Ethan, engaging in activities they both enjoyed. They went hiking, played video games, and watched movies. He made a conscious effort to be present, to listen to Ethan's concerns, and to offer him unconditional love and support. He knew that one day he would have to tell Ethan the truth about his parentage. It would be a difficult conversation, but he wanted Ethan to hear it from him, not from someone else. He wanted to be honest with him, to explain the situation in a way that he could understand, and to reassure him that he would always be loved and supported. As time passed, Ronald began to heal. The pain didn't disappear entirely, but it became more manageable. He started to find joy in small things, like a beautiful sunset, a good book, or a funny joke. He realized that life was still worth living, even in the face of unimaginable loss. He started dating again, cautiously at first, but eventually with more confidence. He met some wonderful women, but he was careful not to rush into anything. He had learned his lesson about trusting too easily. He never fully reconciled with David. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too raw. But he did make an effort to be civil, for Ethan's sake. He knew that Ethan needed to have a relationship with his biological father, and he didn't want to stand in the way. Ronald's life would never be the same. He had been through a crucible of pain and betrayal, and he had emerged a changed man. He was stronger, wiser, and more resilient. He had learned the importance of honesty, communication, and forgiveness. He had learned that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. He had lost everything, but he had also gained something invaluable, a deeper understanding of himself and the true meaning of love. And that, he knew, was a treasure worth more than all the gold in the world. He was finally free, free from the lies, free from the deceit, free to build a new life, a life based on truth, honesty, and unconditional love. He would always cherish the memories of the past, but he would not let them define him. He would look forward to the future with hope and optimism, knowing that he had the strength and resilience to overcome any challenge that came his way. His heart was scarred, but it was also open, ready to love again, ready to embrace the future, whatever it may hold. The storm had passed, and the sun was finally beginning to peek through the clouds. Ronald was ready to step into the light.